We'll meet and hug and have a drink.
Yeah.
Welcome to Travel Matters, the official podcast of TBEX. Here are your hosts, the radio vagabond Palle and TBEX CEO Rick Calvert.
Welcome to a special edition of Travel Matters. My name is Palle and I'm in Cape Town right now, and in, close to San Diego, Rick Calvert is still there. Hi, Rick.
Hi, Palle. Yeah.
So you're in the whole of California is in lockdown right now, and that's something that we're going to be talking about. Obviously, in these Corona times, we're going to be talking about the whole situation and the cancellation and what's going on ahead of us in the future. So, can you just give me a little bit of a sense of what it's like in Temecula right now?
It's pretty calm here, actually. And I would say that probably 80% of the state of California is, that's the term everybody's been using, lockdown. But they're basically telling us to stay at home. So we've got these different levels, and it sounds like it's fairly universal from country to country. It's not shelter in place, which would be the next kind of ratcheting up of the restriction on what we're supposed to do. So we can still go out and go to the store, although most retail stores are closed. If it's not like a gas station, a pharmacy, or a grocery store, most of the other stores are closed. Although I've heard of a few that are still open. Our kids are not in school. It looks like they will not go back to school until the next school year. They originally told us, it would be 2 weeks, but that really starts their spring/Easter vacation. And then they would have about a month back in school, a month and a half before summer vacation. So, about 3 days after they told us, it'd be 2 weeks, they said, you probably should plan on just not going back to school this year. So they're now sending out lesson plans for us to work with the kids and homeschooling stuff, which we've been doing. Yeah.
I'm in Cape Town right now, and I managed to get here, and I thought if I'm going to get stuck somewhere, it's not the worst place. I'm here, and I'm going to spend a couple of months here, and a lot less people on the streets right now. In this episode, we're going around the world. We're going to Rome. We're going to Nairobi. We're going a few places in the U.S. And let's first talk about TBEX Europe. That was obviously canceled, Rick. Can you tell me a little bit about the whole days leading up to the final decision that it was postponed?
Yeah, sure. And actually, it's really important, that distinction is that it's rescheduled, not canceled.
Exactly.
And honestly, I started paying attention to this coronavirus when it first broke out in Wuhan several months ago, or at least when we first heard the news of it, because I have been through this before with SARS several years ago, and there were quite a few events that were canceled or postponed then. Particularly in Toronto, there was an outbreak right there. And the biggest event that I'm aware of was a Microsoft event, like 100,000 people, and that event was canceled because of it, because nobody could go to Toronto. So when this first broke out, I knew that this could affect other parts of the world. So I'm paying attention to this news intently. And then there were some cases in Italy, in the Lombardy region and Veneto region. This is the news that we're seeing from our side. But they said, they've isolated these towns, and they basically had people there doing what we're doing now in California and all over the United States now and other parts of the world. And then there was a case in Palermo. And that's when I knew it was really serious. There was a very real chance that we could have to postpone the event. And we talked to the mayor's office in Catania and told them, hey, look, this could happen. For now, we're okay. Everything is calm. There's no travel restrictions to that part of Italy yet, although there were travel restrictions for Americans to Milan and Venice and, again, those regions. And then while I was talking to the mayor's office that day, President Trump came on with, all the medical experts and stuff and said that they were raising the travel restriction to Italy to level 4. And that basically means no Americans should go there. And that's when I told them, look, there's no choice. We can't do this now because a lot of our attendees are American. And, the things that are happening around the world now were happening in our Facebook group, a month ago, where some people insisting we have to do the event and other people insisting you have to cancel the event. Some people, really scared. I'd say a very small number of people that were really scared. A larger number of people that were concerned that they get stuck somewhere because of a quarantine. And either they couldn't leave Italy after they got there, or they couldn't go to whatever country they were going to next. That was the biggest concern. And the people in Sicily in particular upset seeing that, hey, wait, this could happen and affect our business. And so we just tried to communicate with people every day, let them know what was going on, answer every question. We put everything into one thread in the Facebook group so we could keep track of it all. And when we told people that we were rescheduling, everyone understood and that it was the right thing to do. There was some people that were obviously disappointed, but everyone understood it was the right thing to do. And there were about 50 people who said they were still going to Catania, even if the event was postponed.
Yeah, I almost went.
I know you you're in South Africa now on your connecting flight to Catania, right? You just went to Berlin and ended up in South Africa.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, you might mention in this part of what we're talking about, you were going to Berlin for ITB.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was. I was in Berlin for the ITB that never happened. And it was actually canceled slightly before I got on the plane and flew to Berlin. But I thought, I got accommodation and I got a plane ticket. So Berlin's always nice. And let me go to Berlin and see if anybody else went there. And I actually ended up meeting some of the other attendees. There was a travel massive event going on, and we did get to not shake some hands, but bump some elbows and meet some people. And that felt right at the time. I was disappointed that it was canceled, but then I thought, well, I'm going to Cape Town and there's WTM Africa, so I can go to that. And now that I'm here, that's been canceled as well. It should be should have been in a couple of weeks. So yeah, it's a crazy world, but looking back, it's just so obvious that it happened. At the time, I was like, such a big event like ITB with more than 10,000 exhibitors that is canceled. This is serious.
And thousands of attendees coming from China and hundreds of exhibitors coming from China.
Yeah.
And then again, there's cases in Italy. So lots of attendees coming from Italy and exhibitors from Italy as well. Mm-hmm. And to do the event without those countries represented, even if, it didn't escalate to the way that it did, it would have been just a drastically different event than people expected. Yeah. There was another event scheduled in Berlin at the same time, Berlin Travel Fest, kind of an add-on thing. And they said, okay, the event's still going to happen. And then a couple of days later, they said, actually, we have bad news. We have to cancel the event because we had a meeting and one of the people in that meeting has tested positive for coronavirus. Now none of us can work.
Whoops.
And yeah. So, I mean, that's how quickly it escalated. And even, as I mentioned, we had about 40 people who ended up going to Catania. They did some day trip activities. And again, things were changing every day because the local and national government in Italy were making decisions saying, people have to stand 6 feet apart. They can't be, in a confined space together. And so the fam trips had to be canceled, but they still had some walking tours and day trips for people. And most of the group were out at dinner together at a restaurant when the president came on and announced that the whole country was going to be at everybody stay at home order, and that they were going to be shutting down travel. And so everybody basically stopped their meals and started looking for flights to get home. So it's kind of just incredible for that type of thing to be happening and affecting, the travel industry again was the canary in the coal mine for this whole thing. Yeah. That now is affecting everyone in the world right now.
Let's just bring Shane Dallas into the conversation, because Shane, you're the travel camel and the conference director for TBEX Europe. By the time of the TBEX Europe being postponed, you were all set and had the whole thing lined up and ready to go. How did it look from your part of the table?
Well, exactly what Rick was saying. Rick and I started talking about this when the first case came into Italy, and Rick had told me that just what he said to you, that he had prior experience of something like this and had been keeping an eye on it. And then as the cases in the Lombardy region started to increase, we started to get some people saying, look, some of the speakers saying, we really don't think, we can risk it going. So then it started a bit of a rescheduling for me. And then eventually on the day the US rose the level to level 4, it was such a short period of time. From the time of where things started looking serious, when the first case came in Palermo, it moved so rapidly that suddenly from 2 weeks before to 2 weeks later, it was a totally different situation. And so
I would say it was a period of like 3 days where things were totally fine to where there's no way we can do this.
Yeah, now. And it just changed so fast. And I remember I'd be sitting up late at night because a lot of the news was coming in evening, and I'm 2 hours ahead of Italian time. And so they'd be coming through at night, and I'd be readjusting and be talking to Rick, and then it just seemed the situation changed exponentially. And then once it happened, it was a disappointment, but it wasn't the greatest surprise because the warning signs were increasing all over the place at a very rapid rate.
And at the moment you're back in Nairobi, Kenya, how are things looking there?
It's very different here. We only had the first case just over a week ago. So we're looking at mid-March. And as soon as the first case happened, the government stopped all tourist visas, all visas for non-residents or citizens coming into Kenya. They closed all schools immediately. That was after one case. A week later, now 15 cases, so at the end of March, they have now stopped within 72 hours of now all international flights. Regardless of your nationality, no one can come in. The country's in lockdown. They've closed all pubs, clubs, weddings stopped, funerals can have no more than 15 people. The government was prepared for this because you need to remember that Kenya had to keep the Ebola virus at bay a few years ago. And there was not one case here in Kenya. And there was no cases in adjoining countries to Kenya back in that 2016 period. So they had a lot of the infrastructure set up. So when this has come about now, the government has been doing a lot. I've got to say, I'm really impressed watching it. They're even issuing hand sanitizer for free. They're actually getting together stocks of hand sanitizer to give it out to people. So that's starting to be done now. I saw the first picture on Facebook not long ago. So the situation here, there's no panic buying. Everyone's very calm. It's just the way people are approaching it. I think people are taking it in their stride. The one thing here that is, we talked about the tourism industry, the one thing that is something quite beneficial in some ways in terms of, it could be a lot worse, is that April is the low season for tourism in Kenya because of the rains. So a lot of the national parks close and the game parks close. So Here, people are thinking, well, if we can, April's a bad month for us anyway. Therefore, if we can get through this period and hopefully things are improved in May, then we can get back to business as normal. So it's a different feel. It's a lot calm. It seems calm here compared to what I'm speaking to people in other places. It does have a sense of calm, but though people are obviously a little bit anxious.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is very much the same thing I'm seeing here in South Africa. The government they're very much taking it serious. I can imagine that being a different case in some of the really poor African countries.
I think the Ebola situation from I think it was 2016 around there, which was in West Africa. I remember coming into Kenya then, and I do remember speaking to tour operators in Kenya who said that people were cancelling tours to Kenya, even though there wasn't one case of Ebola in Kenya, nor in any adjoining country. And so I think a lot of in this part of Africa, and even the Western and the Eastern, the governments had all the infrastructure set up, they had all the equipment set up. And so this was used a few years ago. So I think the preparedness is probably higher than what a lot of people think.
You're listening to Travel Matters, the official podcast of TBEX.
Attendees for TBEX come from all over the world. And we have sponsors from all over the world. But we very typically have sponsors from the home country, wherever it is that we're going. We'll have sponsors from that country and from that region. And one of our very first, maybe even the very first sponsor we had for TBEX Europe in Catania was Live Italy. And we've been working with Angelo and his team, primarily Louise from Live Italy, from the very beginning. Even when we were talking about coming to Italy in the first place, they had done some outreach for us to kind of let people know that we were very interested in coming to Italy and explaining to people what TBEX is all about, because they do quite a bit of work with travel bloggers and other content creators now. And so we have as a guest now Angelo, who is the CEO of Live Italy. And Angelo, you're the founder of Live Italy as well?
Yes, that is correct. Live Italy was founded in 2011 after about 6 or 7 years of freelance tour guiding work.
And so let's start there a little bit just to explain your story, because you basically just started out as a guide yourself, kind of an independent guide. Is that correct?
Yeah. Long story short, I started tour guiding I'm born and raised in Rome, and I lived my entire life in Rome, Italy, except for college. Higher education was in California, in Los Angeles. And during my summers, I would go back to Italy, and I was a theater major, so really have nothing to do with tour guiding, even though I was pursuing an art history minor. But between my junior and my senior year, I was in a opera show with a bunch of American singers who were coming to Italy to perform with Italian orchestras and Italian venues. Just a fantastic, phenomenal experience for them. And 6 or 7 of these students never took that flight back. They fell in love with Rome and decided to, be adventurous and live the expat life. And after a year, I got in touch with them, and I was like, I asked them, how in the world are you surviving in Rome as an expat without any sort of language skills? Because they didn't, take the time to learn Italian, much more than just opera singing. And they told me they were tour guiding. So I spent the summer learning and following and shadowing them and started tour guiding myself. And it was a very good job for a college student to have in the summer. So I had a really comfortable senior year. And my project was to move to London after graduation. And unfortunately, I didn't make it to London for all sorts of personal reasons. But I had then moved back to Rome, had been tour guiding for a few months, and made it my profession. And for about 6 or 7 years, I tour guided essentially anything, any type of target or any type of clientele you can think of. I was doing free tours and free promo tours at St. Peter's Basilica or at the Roman Forum, all the way to super VIP clients, very exclusive access museum tours, all the way to cruise ship clients or high school kids that wanted to see 12 cities of Europe in 9 days from somewhere remote in the US. And in 2011, I humbly say that I had a little bit of an epiphany, and there was a target of clientele that wasn't being harassed yet by the ever so very rapidly growing activity industry, which is to this day, hopefully even after this crisis, the fastest growing industry in the travel world. And the target was what we call to this day, the dreamers. So, you're talking about affluent travelers, affluent homes, 2 or 3 degrees each, probably, looking to really kind of live, and hence the name, every single stereotype they're dreaming of when going into a destination. So obviously, Italy offers a lot of that: wine, food, culture, art, archaeology, soccer, religion, fashion, cars. And in 2011, we created a website, liveitaly.com, that would offer every single of these stereotypes transformed into a service. So for the first time, there was a family-run business that was able to directly supply anything from a regular old Vatican Museum walk-in tour all the way to a Ferrari test drive, anything from a boat ride in Amalfi and Capri all the way to cooking classes in somebody's home, in a nonna's home. In 2013, my beautiful wife and mother of my 2 children came into the business, and she came from working in logistics from Sweden. And we decided together that we'd nurture our first baby, Live Italy, together, even at the cost of risking our own, both of our own incomes. And we made a different epiphany, which was that no real tour business can purely survive on cooking classes and Ferrari test drives. And at the end of the day, we're all dependent on Vatican, Colosseum, Doge's Palace, Louvre, Sagrada Familia, British Museum, if you will.
The places everybody wants to see when they come to Italy.
You bet. That list that everybody wants to tick off, whether they're coming for the first time or third time. And so we were dependent of those. And we wanted to make those, even the most traditional venues and sites, and even the most traditional tours, we wanted to make them experiences, truly livable experiences. So we offer, all of our tours and experiences are offered either private, anybody can do that, but every private tour has a little bit of an added value. It could be an after hours or before hours, a special entrance, or an added secret room or something like that. Or what is generally known in the industry as small group tours with guaranteed departure. We offer them with max 6 people. So it's really a one-to-one experience. We eliminate all of those stereotypes that you do and many people are afraid of in tours, such as headsets or dirty flags, or I can't hear the tour guide, I can't keep up with them, I don't remember his or her name, she doesn't remember mine. It was all about connecting. It was all about, it is all about transmitting the energy and the passion and being able to touch, being able to divert conversation, dialogue with clients, have the client dialogue with you. And I guess the variety of their service, that was our first kind of invention, along with the very peculiar type of tour, then made it for a decent, successful company.
Now, Angelo, again, you started off by yourself. You had some, small group of people working with you, your wife working with you. So you are a small business. I saw a statistic from Roger Dow, the head of the U.S. Travel Association, over the weekend. He said 86% of travel businesses in the U.S. are small businesses. Would you say that's the same in Italy? Or is it different? Are there big companies in the tour operating business in Italy?
If we're talking about incoming, so tour businesses that are offering either hospitality or services or transfers to foreigners, I would say even more.
Yep.
Of course, there's a couple of biggies that take up a grand portion of the market. There's also a lot of subcontracted companies that work for the biggies, but there's also an amazing amount of tiny family-owned businesses that deliver the almost perfect experiences for people.
And so, again, I call you a small business, but you have expanded over the years. How many people before this happened, how many people did you have working for you and working with you independently?
Well, in the office, we have an operations and customer service department. We have a marketing and content department. We have a IT department, and then we have ground operations. And then we have across the destinations, we have what we call guide managers. So people, they still work as freelance base, but they work directly in touch with our tour guides in Venice and Florence and Milan and Paris and Barcelona and Rome and whatnot. But in the office, full-time employees that cover these 3 to 4 main departments, we were up to 14 people full-time.
And just recently expanded to Paris and Barcelona as well. Is that right?
Barcelona has been up for about 18 months, and Paris, yes, Paris was our I call it BC, before Corona project that we were just launching in February. Yes, we were, during the outbreak in Italy, I was in Paris doing my last dry runs, just to give you an idea of the timings.
And you were going to do, you guys as a TBEX sponsor, were actually going to host tours to Barcelona and Paris for some of our attendees.
Yeah.
In addition to the walking tours you guys were doing in Catania and other things that you guys were doing in Sicily. You had an amazing tour in Sicily, again, that you were hosting for some of our attendees. So when did you start to see the signs that this either could impact your business, or did it just totally take you by surprise, like this just happened overnight, or did you see it coming a little bit?
Well, Louise and I and Morel, one of our old employees, were in New York at the New York Times Travel Show at the end of January. And right after that, I was doing a bunch of meetings with partners in the East Coast. And I remember vividly us setting up first day, setting up the booth, and going into the Javits Center lobby foyer, and there's a big, huge flat screen TV at the top, and it was CNN talking about COVID-19 in China. I've been in travel a lot. I've been through a death of a pope and a change of a pope. I've been through Ebola. I've been through I've been through the financial crisis of 2008.
Yep.
And I was never
SARS for sure.
SARS, yeah, absolutely. I was never expecting. I was seeing there was something happening, but I couldn't really. There was no way I could have grasped the magnitude of it. There was no way.
Yeah, nothing like this has ever happened. I mean, this is
no. I remember vividly pulling our heads up. It was Morel and I and Louise and Sarah. It was just the 4 of us of the hundreds or maybe thousands of people in the lobby. We were pulling our heads up, looking at it, and we're all kind of tightening our teeth. And so I went to the store and I bought a bunch of disinfectant for our hands. And I told the girls, I said, we're going to shake thousands of hands in the next 3 days. Just, wash them off as much as you can.
Be safe.
And that was, the extent of the alert that I felt I needed the urge to have right there at that moment. And then we had a very intense February where we were working a lot on marketing, preparing the year, working on TBEX projects, working on the FAM trips. So we had a very intense and rapid February. And then on the 23rd or 24th of February, I took a flight to go up to Paris. And speaking of small family business, it's Christine and I want to do the dry runs. We are the ones who do the site inspections and dry runs and stuff like that, and product research and product development. So I went up there, and I was supposed to be there for 2 days. On the 3rd day, I was supposed to take a flight down to Rome while Christine was taking a flight up to Paris during our kids' school hours, so that then I could come home, go and pick them up, and then Christine would finish the site inspections and dry runs for 2 days. I remember boarding that flight to go to Paris after 2.5-hour flight. I opened my email and there's 25 cancellation requests. And that's when it struck me.
Just to put in perspective,
Yeah.
On a given day, how many cancellations would you get?
On any given day in a regular year,
Yeah.
less than 1, 0.
Right. So that's obviously a seismic ground shift to see that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I went ahead and instructed, the girls at home how to deal with it, trying to convince clients to take travel credit and consider this a temporary crisis and maybe travel in a few months or next year. But there was a lot of psychosis going around. And so much that, as you guys were saying earlier, things changed really drastically in just a couple of hours or 24, 48 hours, to the point that Christine didn't feel comfortable leaving Rome to Paris in case either of us would get stuck traveling. We wouldn't be able to get back to our children. So she missed her flight. I stayed in Paris, purchased a new flight. By the time I'm back on Saturday night, Sunday, Christine and I look at each other. We had received hundreds of cancellations. We had processed already dozens of thousands of dollars of refunds to our clients. We look at each other and we realized this was huge. And we started getting a sense of the magnitude, not in terms of the sanitary crisis that it was that we would then learn about as we went. As I said the other day to somebody, I said we all kind of became virologists.
Yep.
Epidemiologists, but I certainly knew what was happening to our business, and we had an emergency meeting on Monday, and as we all sat in one room, and we shared all of the numbers to all of our employees and our family members, as we call them, and I still get a little emotional because it was really a strenuous day. And they were all very extraordinarily supportive, but also very worried. And we had to put out of 14 people, 9 people on part-time. We shared a strategy with them. We told them that we would support them and we try to get out of this, and that we had created 3 steps to the crisis, and that was step 1.
Most content creators will understand this to some level. Many of them are entrepreneurs and just a solo independent entity. And we'll talk to Tomiko and Shane about that in a little bit, but who are both bloggers, content creators themselves. But as a business owner, and again, a lot of content creators have taken that step where you have employees or a virtual assistant or, people that you pay on a regular basis that depend on you to pay their bills. And so I know, again, I'm a small business owner. I know you feel this, Angelo, that you're responsible to help take care of these people who have been working for you, some of them for many, many years now. I can't imagine how difficult that conversation is for you. Yeah.
Yeah. The story continues because at the end of the day, we had to, at least so far, let 4 people go. So the story becomes even more drastic, and our heart aches because it isn't a business choice. It isn't a company choice. It isn't a strategy. It isn't something that didn't work out. We have no solution. There is no, and there's no other way that we could have and will be able to continue. No matter how much they gave, and we are extraordinarily appreciative of it. Sometimes, unfortunately, we won't. I highly doubt that we'll be able to continue with this entire team for much longer.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a light at the end of the tunnel when all of this blows over? You think you're going to pull through?
Well, Palle, right now it's a bloodbath in terms of economics because there is zero cash flow and only requests of cancellation and refunds. And we, as tour operators in the activity industry, find ourselves have figured out that there was a huge bubble And the huge bubble comes from being the middleman between a ticket venue, say the Colosseum or the Vatican or the Louvre, and a client. The client is requiring free cancellation without any sort of penalty because the industry is asking that and it's pressuring us into this. And ticket venues are like, no way, Corona can come down. No way I'm going to give you that money back. And we're finding ourselves in a desperate situation with trying to meet up with our clients' demands. So that's why we're pushing travel credit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So right now, no, I don't see much of a light at the end of the tunnel because there isn't a cure or there isn't a vaccine or anything that will solve the sanitary crisis. The other issue is that even if clients were not scared or were willing to wait and see and weigh things off and see how the season went or see how the first months of the summer went and then, figure it out later, considering they have free cancellation up until 24 hours, it's airlines and cruise ships that are canceling it. Even as far as October, November, I'm getting clients saying, I wish I could come, but I just got my flight canceled. I need to cancel this tour.
Yeah.
So we're finding ourselves that even if, say, tomorrow, and obviously I'll give you my positive attitude. I'm sorry, I've been a little bit too negative. Even if tomorrow they find a vaccine and they treat millions of people and we're all okay, it's going to take big vectors like airlines and stuff like that to pick up their flights again, rehire their staff as they are already planning to run on fuel for the entire on reserve for the entire year. It'll take time for them to pick up again and make sure that people travel and then come to the destinations. Now, here's the positive thing. I think lockdown works. I'm seeing good trends in our numbers. So even if we don't find necessarily a cure or vaccine, I think we've reached the peak in this country. If only the rest of the world would apply faster and more drastic measures than Italy has, considering they can see their future in us, we're probably globally going to get out of this faster than what China did or faster than what Italy is going through right now. And so then you start getting, a little bit more comfortable and relaxed. You don't cancel that trip in October and you just save on to it. So maybe we'll save a part of the year. And the other positive thing that it's pure chance, really, it's the V factor. And because this is shock and it's a shock crisis, it came in a few hours. It means there's probably going to be a shock boom. And
recovery,
recovery. And like they call it in China, they call it revenge shopping.
Yeah.
People, as soon as they're allowed back onto the street, they're lining up into shops. They're spending their money in restaurants and trips and planning in jewelry stores and stuff like that. So I'm expecting that as soon as the markets feel comfortable and stock market starts seeing that V effect, we'll have a huge recovery. We'll all be, and who's ever survived it will be stronger than what they have been until February 22nd. But that's the thing. We just need to evaluate, or we just need to know how long this is going to take. And that's why our karma word at the company, at Live Italy and the family, has been hibernate. We need to hibernate and freeze everything and just run on the lowest possible matter until we're able to get any sort of signal of this recovery.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm really encouraged to hear what you just said, Angelo, about you seeing the peak. And I, again, use that cautiously. I have the same optimism you do, that, and what you said, we've all become virologists.
Yeah.
And, as entrepreneurs, it's just our nature to try to learn everything about a problem when you see it.
Yeah.
And I saw these numbers in Italy myself that, Shane and I had this conversation a couple of days ago when the number went from 400 to 600 in a day of people who had died. I said, yeah, but the number went from 200 to 400 the day before. So that means it's actually slowing down. Even though it's more people, it's getting near the top of and once it gets to the top, it'll start coming down again. That's what I saw. And it sounds like you guys are seeing the same thing there in Italy. I mean, it's heartbreaking, devastating, unbelievable for everyone going through it all. But it does look like, as you said, the lockdown is working and you are reaching a point to where you can see this ending?
Yeah, we just have to hold tight, maybe even apply a couple of more drastic measures like they have. Last night, the Prime Minister, 2 nights ago, the Prime Minister said, really don't go out for any reason other than going to the grocery store, going to the pharmacy. If you have to walk your dog, do it 200 meters from your house, not a meter more than that. And, in reality, it sounded like, oh my gosh, the issue is longer than what we think. But I read it as step forward, one more sacrifice, because we've been reading the numbers and this is what we need to do, and we will get out of this. So we had I had an interesting interview actually at the beginning of this crisis with the Washington Post. They interviewed me and came out a beautiful article. But I remember being, the stupid entrepreneur who said, "Oh, people are just too scared. Let's don't cancel and travel." And then all the borders started closing and everything. But in a way, now I'm sort of relieved that all of this happened, because as I become a virologist and realize that there is actually a sanitary issue, we don't want the sanitary system, the healthcare system, to collapse. We want to save the lives of people with low immune system and elderly. We want to preserve them. Why shouldn't we? And Italy is all about, the
family.
The weaker. That's our politics. That's our healthcare. That's what we care for. I mean, nonna. Everybody cares for nonna. So why shouldn't we in this situation? And I am proud. I'm proud of the unity that the country has found themselves into, and that's why I see a light at the end of the tunnel. That's my metaphor, my metaphysical hope.
We've seen on the news people, hanging the flag out the window to show that they're safe, or neighborhoods kind of leaning out the window and singing. Have you seen any of that stuff personally in your neighborhood?
Yeah, yes, and there's been a lot of also, what's up hangouts and people singing at all times. There's been flash mobs at 6 p.m. I was telling someone the other day in the U.S. that I thought it was a fantastic and phenomenal way to kind of vent out your frustration more than show your unity. And I'm only purely assuming this. Flash mobs are organized every day at 6 p.m. where you say, go out onto your balcony and bang your pots or sing Vincero, whatever you feel like doing. Just get out there at 6 p.m. and vent out and do something very Italian, if you will.
Yeah.
And then every day at 6 p.m. is actually when on all newspapers and TV stations is when the civil unit, the Protezione Civile, gets online and gives us the stats and the numbers of the new infected people, the deaths, and the recovered patients. And I only realized that a couple of days into the flash mobs, and it kind of struck me because some people ended up realizing it a little late in the game and they thought it was a little controversial. I think it's even, why should you listen to the news at 6 p.m. when that guy's telling you live? If you read it at 6:10, it won't change, it won't make a difference.
Right.
So it's a good answer to what is in reality counting the dead, like in war.
Right.
And you do that in war while you're counting the dead or picking up the dead out of a war field. You sing, or you get up and you put your hand on your chest, or you play the trumpet, or whatever it is. And I that's why I started appreciating the flash mobs a lot more.
I think you said it, Angelo. It's like a defiant statement from everybody together, as you're not going to be defeated by this, and you'll get through it, and things will be okay again eventually.
Yeah. The other day I was I was talking to my California grandfather who's 97 years old, and he lives in a retirement community, and they've been on lockdown for quite a bit actually there, considering how old he is. And I was explaining everything that I told you all today, and as he was listening, and he's a little bit of hard hearing, but all of a sudden he says, all right, well, you take care, son. And that's all he said. And when he said that, it really struck me. Well, this man was on a ship and barely escaped Pearl Harbor and was on the Pacific Ocean during World War II, waiting to either attack or be attacked from the Japanese. My other grandfather was a soldier for Mussolini, and then when the Allies invaded, he was from Naples. He's the first one who turned around and started fighting with the Allies, probably imprisoned in the middle of that. I have friends who had their grandparents during the wars imprisoned in Kenya and in northern Italy. Of course, this has been said and resaid, and you see memes about this everywhere, but it is really an easy war here we're fighting. Who is really on the lines is our doctors and nurses and hospitals. And that's really who I am worried for, but I'm also very confident we have some of the best doctors and the best healthcare system of the world, and we're very proud of it. So yes, this will just need some time, but unity will help.
Well, we really appreciate you sharing the optimism again and the good news, because as we all know, and this is a thing that we create such an opportunity for content creators, the content creators who come to TBEX. All of us collectively don't trust the news or don't like the news, even if we believe what they're saying, we don't like the way they say it. That is the reason that so many consumers come to independent content creators to research where they're going on their trip or get information about their politics or food recipes or whatever it is. So Angelo, I'm curious how long you think this, I know you said you think a V-shaped recovery. I talked to Enit, the National Tourist Board, who's also a sponsor of TBEX Europe. They said this was the biggest year ever, on pace to be the biggest year ever in tourism to Italy. And again, the number that I've heard is it's 17% of the total economy in Italy, tourism. But obviously this changed all that. This won't be the biggest year. How long you see this recovery taking to get back to where it was before this happened?
At least a year.
Yeah.
And simply because, in Italian we say fai I conti della serva, and I don't really know how to translate that, but it's an idiomatic phrase. If you really just count in the hands of the slave, that's I guess what it means. The tourism, especially here, even though we started learning how to manage a low season and we started utilizing our art cities and making sure that they would have a good amount of visitors even during the winter months, and that we weren't weather dependent. We shouldn't have been weather dependent ever. We are, at the end of the day, a seasonal profession, an industry. Say on the 4th of April, the lockdown ends, everybody can go and line up at a restaurant or go get a beer together or go to the shop and purchase bags and clothes and stuff like that. So their recovery will be much faster. Now you have to calculate, people need to plan. People need to start having the time to rethink. People need to start feel confident about travel, which is the first thing they lost with the closing of the borders and the levels rising on an hourly basis. And then there's low season, and low season will hit, and then we'll be back into the next year. Add to that a little bit of financial uncertainty. So I really think it'll take a year for us to even start seeing what would have been 2020. So we skipped a year, essentially, hoping that some businesses will survive through it, but we've skipped a year.
And how important will it be for the economy in Italy? And I know all over the world, you guys, again, are such a sign of what's to come for everybody else. The doctors and the healthcare providers are the ones leading the war now, but you guys are the front lines as soon as everybody says, okay, you can travel again now.
Yeah. I think there needs to be drastic and more powerful governmental measures to sustain the industry. So far, what has been done on the newspaper, as you say, it looks nice, but we haven't had any access to the funds that they so claim to have put down in on the newspapers. There has been no bureaucratical normative or information on how to request a FEMA type of loan. I don't think I think they should have evaluated the crisis in our industry different from a crisis in other fields. So, for example, we're able to, and Louise knows this, we're able to put Louise and her colleagues on what is called Cassa Integrazione, which means that we're able to freeze our business and have them be paid on a 73% basis only, but being paid by the government when you state that the crisis started, but only for an amount of time of 9 weeks. And of course, if it's 9 weeks for a company that makes toilet paper, it's one thing. And if it's 9 weeks for a company that works in travel, it's a completely different thing. I think it should have been much longer for us. And I hope that more drastic governmental measures will be done separately just for us. And I think that will be then the front line of let's get the economy rolling again, because we've preserved and we saved and we helped so many businesses in both hospitality activity and in ticketing and stuff like that. Yes, we will be the front line if the government has done enough for us.
So most people don't know this, especially people who don't work in travel. But I would say a lot of people, even who work in travel, don't know this. The travel is the biggest industry in the world. Now, measured by, again, government standards, international economic standards, they'll actually say oil and gas is number one and travel's number two. Very close. But they're not counting all of the impact that travel really has. And so, people who do this, the head guy, Rafit from Skift, I saw him just put this in an email about a week ago, and this is something I've been saying for a long time. Travel is the biggest industry in the world. Do you think that this ordeal that we've all been through now is going to wake up our governments, respective governments, to just how big of an impact we have on the overall economy in our government? You think this will give them a new appreciation to how important travel really is to the overall economy?
I hope so. Well, I told you what I think about the Italian government, and I think, and I told you I hope they're going to do more about us. I think there needs to be much. There doesn't have to be just measures, but also they need to be aware of how much more promotion they need to do about their destinations on a public level. And yes, they need to understand and appreciate also business travel, which is a huge part of our industry. Which, can you imagine the amount of loss they had?
In meetings, and conventions, trade shows, all of it.
Media, absolutely. But I'll tell you this little anecdote, and you'll understand that the situation in the U.S. isn't any better. In terms of appreciation for travel and even appreciation for this crisis, Live Italy Tours is composed of two businesses. One is set up in California as an LLC, and it's the company that runs our website and the e-commerce aspect of it and the marketing of it. And then there's the Italian business, which is an SRL, which basically deals with the ground operations and everything that has happened here on European territory. Obviously, therefore, we are trying to access loans in the U.S. too, to try and find solutions. And my bank sent me a link saying, hey, look, you can go to the SBA website, and they've announced California as a COVID-19 crisis, and you can access loans for COVID-19 virus. So I was like, oh, that's amazing. Italy is so slow and so behind this, and bureaucracy is going to take so long. Maybe I can have a faster, very American-style access to something that could help us get through this hibernation and this crisis. So I go ahead and sign up onto the website, and I I start downloading the form, and I start filling it up, and it asks me for our office address. So I punch in the registered office address, and then it says, "Are you a owner or a leaser or something other of this property?" And I said, "Well, that's none of your business, but okay, fine." And I answer that question, and then it's because this is an e-commerce, right? And then he says, "What is the damage to your property?" And I said, "No, wait a minute. This is COVID-19. Viruses do not do damage to properties. This is and I start looking at it, and this is a hurricane type of form. This is an earthquake type of form. This is probably a California fire type of form. It hasn't been updated to what the current crisis is."
Yep.
So I'm like, all right, fine. I'll just put up the same address and see where it leads me. Next field is, can you set up an appointment with a FEMA employee to come and evaluate the damage on your property? And I'm like, oh my gosh. They've announced they have access to FEMA loans for companies, but they don't understand what the actual damage is. It's purely financial. It's purely economical. So maybe ask me to show you my numbers. Maybe ask me to show you my cancellation rate. Maybe ask me to show you, projections versus reality versus 2019. Instead, you're asking me to come and evaluate the damage on my home. So there's really, I hope, as you say, Rick, I hope there's going to be a much bigger and much better appreciation of how extraordinarily important travel is in the entire globe and soon to come in the entire universe. If you think that the exploration into the universe is soon to come to become part of our industry, it should create awareness, and it should create interest in governments to support this type of economy. Absolutely.
By the way, I agree with you 100%. I think the travel industry is almost completely overlooked here in the U.S., except by people in the industry.
Yeah.
Just before we let you go, and I would like to know, what does Rome look like? Because I guess we've all been to Rome and know how bustling that beautiful city is. Obviously, you don't go out that much, but what does it look like there right now?
I can only tell you via pictures or via webcams. You can access webcams. You just put, like, for example, San Pietro webcam or Piazza Venezia webcam on Google, or any other landmark, and you Google with a webcam, and it gives you access to the webcam of that landmark. And that's what I've been able to access, because really we're not really allowed to take walks either. And it's sad.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It's gorgeous. I wish I could be there, because you can only really experience it like that at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. And we do actually, believe it or not, we have tours at 6 a.m. purely to make sure that they can enjoy Rome a la coronavirus style. But it is sad because the bustling sense, the electricity that you feel in a city like Rome or in a country like Italy, the anything from people screaming about buying my tomatoes all the way to tour guides everywhere, from buses almost running you over. I mean, everything that you really kind of complain about.
All the Vespas. Yeah, all the scooters. All
the best kind of buzz that is the first one that you miss. I surely wish I could be inside the Vatican Museum surrounded by 30,000 sweating people right now, trying to let my group enjoy the tour and enjoy the sights. I really miss that, even though it was horrendous at some point. And maybe actually, if there's any positivity in this, if we get out of this as soon as possible and people are still willing to travel in 2020, this is probably the best year to do it, because due to the above described uncertainties, I don't think that these museums and these venues and these streets that have been overcrowded with mass tourism for the past 5 to 6 years are going to even see remotely the amount of numbers they used to see up until last year. And so if you have the ability to travel, this is the time, because you enjoy an empty museum, you enjoy an empty Colosseum, you enjoy beautiful restaurants that are ready to serve you and you only in a very, very particular way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is probably the year.
Absolutely.
The last thing that I wanted to say is I wanted to give a shout out to all the TBEXers that either the ones that ended up traveling to Sicily or the ones that made a choice to not to. They've been extraordinarily supportive with us. To Live Italy and to Live Tours. We were so much looking forward to meet with them, so much looking forward to spend some time with them, to talk about ideas, to talk about exploration, adventure, love, passion, every sentiment that travel instigate. We were looking forward to traveling with them, taking tours with them, testing our Sicily products with them, taking them to Paris and Barcelona and elsewhere in Italy. We're sad and devastated this has been postponed, but we have loved every single second of their support, of their love. And we are so looking forward to getting all of that project back on track and be able to do all of the above mentioned things with them as soon as possible.
And that's the word. It's been postponed, so we will hopefully meet pretty soon when this is blown over, and I can't wait to experience all that.
We'll meet and hug and have a drink.
Yeah, the feeling is mutual for sure, Angelo. And again, thank you guys so much for all your support, even when things were, we first started to see things were going to get very difficult for everyone. Louise and I were in contact almost every day. And just talking about, how does this change? How are things changing today? You guys done such a tremendous job and been such a great supporter of TBEX in particular, but of content creators in general. You guys do a lot of content marketing. You work with a lot of creators. We really appreciate that. And we will get to Sicily.
You bet.
We will share that good time just a little bit later than we all expected.
You bet. Absolutely.
And get some of that great Italian food.
You bet.
So, yeah.
Well, Angelo, we wish you guys, all of you guys, the very, very best. And we're sending you all of our thoughts and prayers and support right now. And
thank you so much. And to you as well. Read the future and let's get out of this as soon as possible globally.
We will. Thank you, Angelo.
See all the links mentioned in this episode in the show notes and on tbexcon.com/podcast.
And speaking of the future, Rick, is there anything you can tell us about when it's going to happen?
So right now we're holding dates in September. We've got from September 18th to the end of the month at the convention center in Catania now. We also have some backup dates in November, and that really depends on how long this all takes. Originally the mayor's office had asked us to try to do it in June. When we first said, hey, we have to reschedule. But even then I told them, June's just too soon for people to remake plans, and we don't know where we're going to be at that time.
No,
I think September is definitely the earliest opportunity. And the longer this goes on, the more likely it looks in November. But what Angelo just said about this being the time for you to go to a place like Rome or Paris or Barcelona or Prague that is typically overcrowded, this is the time, when this is over, to see those places the way you haven't been able to see them in years.
Exactly.
I can't wait. And we need to all just remain calm and get through what we're going through now.
Yeah.
But we'll get to Sicily when this is all over.
Yeah. Shane, are you still here?
I certainly am. That was an inspiring conversation from Angela. That was fantastic.
Yeah. So, Shane, with the lineup of speakers and stuff that you had already planned for Catania, are you able to reschedule those, or do you know anything about that? Is it going to be just as strong a lineup?
Well, we've told all the speakers that what we've announced is already guaranteed for the next for the rescheduled date. And so I'm not going to know who of those can say, yes, I can make it, or if some of them say, well, I don't think I can, until we announce the date. So at the moment, what you see, what was originally planned for March, will carry over until the new date, and it will only change if some of the speakers cannot make it, and then we will replace them.
Yeah.
Shane, I don't know if you have any thoughts on what it will look like after coronavirus is over.
I think I do have some thoughts on this. I think people in the industry I think the industry will recover at different rates and different places. So, for example, a place that is largely dependent on local tourism within a country, I think will recover more quickly. I think places that deal with more tourists from Asia, Middle East, Africa, I think they will recover more quickly. And the reason for that is that whenever something like this happens, whether it's a threat to people's safety through health or through a conflict, the people that seem to come back the quickest are those from Asia, Africa, Middle East. And to give you an example, I was at Arabian Travel Market in Dubai last year, and I spoke to the CEO of Sri Lankan Airlines. And there was a month after the bombing, the terrorist bombing on the church. And I asked him, I said, how have your bookings held up? He said, actually, very well. Very well. And I said, what countries have dropped the most? He said, UK and Australia. He said, but the Asian market is still traveling. And you will find that as well. I remember being in Egypt a few years ago when there was the potential threat that something could be wrong. Hardly any Europeans who were there en masse. It was the Chinese. And so if you're looking at how to recover and how the industry will recover more quickly, I think those that can tap into the Asian market, the Middle East market, and the African market, I think they will rebound more quickly than those that purely rely on people, say, from North America, Europe, and Australia.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shane.
Thank you for sharing travel matters with your friends and followers on social media. You're the best.
Let's go to North America, because you also have TBEX North America coming up. According to the plan, that's going to be in October.
October 7 to 9. The rest of the TBEX team is actually talking to Lafayette right now while we're talking. The plans for Lafayette are well underway. We released all the hotel information last week, announced that. They were just asking me when we want to announce the tours, because the tours are done for Lafayette already, which they have some really awesome stuff there and all over the state. And then we announced our new conference director, co-conference director with Tim Leffel, who's done a great job the last couple of years, Tomiko Harvey, who has spoke at TBEX, been to several TBEX events, is for lack of a better word, a mover and a shaker in the space. I'm a huge fan of hers, and Tomiko's been a big help to me over the last couple of years, just with, trying to get the pulse of things that are going on and the way she kind of sees the world.
And you know what, Rick? We actually have her on the line. How do I like that introduction?
Well, I was just going to say, I was so excited when she accepted, when I asked her if she'd be willing to do this, and she said yes. She has no idea how happy I was.
Yes, I've always been a huge fan of TBEX, and, Rick knows that I'm a huge proponent of TBEX and just making sure that the industry is moving in the right direction, and that TBEX is also moving in conjunction with the way that the industry is moving. So those are just, I'm very pleased to be on board. I'm very grateful that, Rick trusts me with his brand.
Absolutely, we do. Because Tomiko's got a unique set of skills. She's a content creator herself. And Tomiko, I know you've learned things at TBEX, so you kind of see it from that attendee perspective. I think you took Gemma and Laura's SEO course at TBEX a year or two ago now.
Yes, it's almost 2 years now that I took the course. Yes.
So Gemma and Laura from Make Traffic Happen, who've taught this SEO course at TBEX before, and we're scheduled to do it again in Catania, and we hope they'll be able to come back in September once we've got everything reconfirmed and reannounced and all that. But Tomiko, you're not the first person to tell me that course workshop and you putting into practice what they did had a huge impact on your traffic.
It really did. And I think that is the key thing that I want to drive away with, not just North America, but Europe as well. You can go to the conferences, listen, take notes, but it's what you do after you leave the conference and actually applying and making it applicable in your business. Because if you don't do the work after you leave, you can't say I didn't get anything from the conference. You actually, and that's the one thing that I love about Laura and Gemma, that they give you tangible things, tangible takeaways that you can go and implement right away, which will make the difference. I mean, before I took the course, I was probably what you would call maybe Instagram or social media famous, but I did not have the traffic that went along with my popularity. And once I took Gemma and Laura's course, I went probably from about 500 page views to maybe around about 30,000 in less than a year.
Whoa.
Oh.
So that's huge. But that also means doing the work and not just taking the courses and implementing something here or there. That is, when you want your business to run as a business, you have to actually do the work and implement the things that, these individuals that are professionals in the travel industry are telling you that are going to take your business to the next level.
Yep. It's absolutely true. If you don't act on what you learn, nothing's going to happen. So going to the event is just the start of the work that you have to do. So Tomiko, I'm sorry you got thrown into the fire. I mean, we'd offered you the position. You said yes, but before we even announced it, the whole world was on lockdown.
Right. Yes. But you know what? Change is inevitable, and being able to pivot is just a part of, regardless of what industry you're in, change and being able to pivot when things happen just sort of dictates, what kind of professional you are. And just because we are pivoting did not mean that I was going to say, oh my God, we're burning, so I'm not going to take the position. It's about figuring out what needs to happen. How do we pivot? And how do we support those that are in the travel space? What do we do to support them during this time when people aren't Googling, where to go in Rome or what to do in Sicily, or, how are we going to pivot, and what can we take from this and implement into the conference so that we can say, what happens when the travel industry is affected or when your business is affected by these circumstances? What do you have in your business so that you won't suffer or your income won't suffer? So those are things that we are looking at as well. What kind of courses and classes can we have so that individuals in the travel space will be able to pivot if something like this occurs again?
Do you have any suggestions on specific things they could be doing right now while everybody's traffic is down? I see it in all the Facebook groups, and all creators are saying my Google traffic is gone. I'm not going on any tours. There's no client work I can do right now. Tomiko and Shane, and Tomiko, I'll ask you first. What can content creators be doing right now?
For me personally, I am taking this opportunity. I have been saying, what kind of content can you create outside of destinations that you can be creating that's going to create income for you moving forward? So for me personally, I am working on ebooks that I have been saying over the last year and a half that I wanted to create, that I'm going to take the next month and I'm going to crank out 3 or 4 ebooks that I've been wanting to create. And my videography skills and photography skills that I've been saying I needed to hone up on, those are some things that you can work inside of your business. So, we're all trying to keep it going, but what can you do inside of your business, the back end, to really make it a business and think about the business aspect of it, as opposed to thinking tactically. How can you think strategically that is going to turn this around long term for you? So while the traffic may have died down right now, what can you be doing strategically and not tactically to move your business to the next level? So for me, I'm thinking about it that way. I've stopped looking at my Google Analytics. I've stopped looking at my Mediavine funds because it's like completely dried up. But what else can I be doing right now that can help move me forward into 2021? So I think for me, those types of things are pivotal in where my mind is going. Like, I'm not just going to think about writing an article, but what else can I be doing outside of the normal everyday things that is going to set you apart? If you come out of this and your photography skills are not better than what they were when you started, your videography skills, your SEO, writing books, those are things that you should be taking advantage of. I mean, if it's just we're stuck in the house for 24 hours a day, I'm going to start picking up my camera for at least 2 hours a day and taking pictures around the house so that I understand the actual camera, what goes on in editing. I've been saying I want to do this for 2 years now. So now I have the opportunity.
That is such good advice, Tomiko, really.
Really good.
And Shane, the same question for you, because you're also a content creator. What do you think?
Oh, I thought what Tomiko said was excellent. I concur. I've sent to some of the people I've worked with for quite a long time, I've just sent them to say, hey, hope you're doing okay. It's a tough time. If you need any support, just, let me know. And it's just there as a message of support to say, hey, I'm thinking of you. And I think that's a very important thing to do. Doing back-end work, things that you've always wanted to do, like we're looking at website speed now because it's a good time to do it, probably. I think that's important. Think of other ways to expand your markets, to expand your audience. Is there an audience? Is there a demographic out there that you'd like to reach? Is this the time to do your research to try to reach it as well? And I do think getting prepared now for when everything is normal again, and it will be, of course, is better now. Better to get in early than to wait. So I'd be preparing things now. So as soon as restrictions started getting lifted, then you hit the ground running effectively and you start off straight away and you get out there. Because I can tell you now, the demand for content creators when restrictions are lifted and people are wanting to travel will be higher than ever. So if you can ride out this storm, you are perfectly positioned to form long-term partnerships with DMOs and other travel providers to bring the industry back to where it was before and even stronger.
I absolutely agree with that as well, Shane, that while this is incredibly difficult for everyone, I mean, the entire travel industry, when this is over, and it will end, there will be more opportunities for content creators than ever before. Every destination in the world will want and need to be promoting tourism to their destination, and content creators are how they're going to be doing it. And the opportunities are going to be massive for the people that are, number one, have been able to make it through, and number two, take advice like Tomiko just gave and you did, to be able to stand out from the competition when this is all over.
Okay, this has been a special Corona episode of Travel Matters, and we've been talking for a long time, but I think it's been super interesting. I want to thank Shane and Angelo and Tomiko, and it's been really interesting.
Thank you, Palle, for putting this together to do this special episode as well.
Thank you, Rick, and we will return with more Travel Matters as soon as we have something interesting to bring you about what the world is coming to, because I get the feeling that things change every day. sometimes many times every day. So we will be back with more. Just make sure that you keep being subscribed to Travel Matters, and thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
You've been listening to Travel Matters, the official podcast of TBEX. This episode of Travel Matters was hosted by TBEX CEO Rick Calvert and Radio Vagabond Palle and produced by Radioguru.co.uk.